I'm Nikki Cauchi, your host for this episode. Today I'll be speaking with Rosie Glenister, who through a challenging life circumstance found a deeper relationship with God. Rosie, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks for inviting me, Nikki.
Now, Rosie, you at the age of 18 gave your life over to Jesus. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, look, my parents brought us up Catholic, and they did an amazing job sharing their faith with us, taking us to church. And I always grew up with a sense that I knew God existed. Around my 18th birthday, our cousins who lived down the road started going to a Pentecostal church and invited us to a youth camp. So I went along and had an amazing experience with God. Really met Him, and He met me. And just started my journey, as in a deeper faith with Him.
Okay, so at 22 you got married.
Yep.
And then for a 6-year period you had 3 sons. Mm-hmm. And then you fell pregnant again for the 4th time.
Yes.
So tell me about that pregnancy.
Yeah, look, I think the thing that sort of stands out for me in hindsight about that time was about 3 weeks before I even found out I was pregnant, I fell quite ill with, it was like the flu, but very, much worse. And I've never ever had anything like it. I was sort of bedridden for a couple of weeks, and then 3 weeks later I found out I was pregnant, forgot all about that. But then at the 18-week scan I found out that the doctors informed me that my baby in utero had anencephaly, which is a neural tube had failed to form, so the skull wasn't formed inside. So the brain was there, but basically the amniotic fluid just flooded in that area and ate away at her brain.
Okay, so you also had the option of an abortion.
Yeah, I did.
So what did you choose?
Well, Nikki, when the doctor gives you that sort of news, you are struck with disappointment and just deep sadness. And how he put it to me was, look, you're only 18 weeks. At 20 weeks, if your baby dies, you'll have to fill out a death certificate because it's deemed then to be a human. So have an abortion now, it'll be as if nothing happened. And at that time and the way I was feeling, I just said, yes, I'll go down that road and I'll have the abortion. But that night I went to bed and, woke up with this strong, something was on me, I couldn't move, and I just struggled out of bed and I ran. I just remember it vividly, running into the lounge room, throwing myself on the floor and crying out to God and saying, you need to speak to me right now about this situation. This is totally out of left field. And God speaks to us in different ways. I picked up my Bible and it just opened to, I think it was the 2nd book of Samuel, either 1st or 2nd, where these words just jumped out at me, Nikki, and they said, do not stretch forth your hand against the Lord's anointed. I know that it was in reference to King David possibly taking the life of King Saul, but I just knew what God was saying to me, that this life inside me was not put there by it. There's a divine aspect of having a child, and I wasn't to stretch forth my hand and take it away. That if the Lord wanted her to live or die in utero, He would do it, not me. And I do want to say, Nikki, that even though we didn't choose to have an abortion, I know that some people, I feel for people who have gone down that path, and I just want to say that God loves the people who are alive. He loves us in our brokenness. He loves us when we make bad decisions, and that there is healing and forgiveness for any bad decision we make through Jesus Christ. So I don't want that statement to be any sort of condemnation on people who have chosen to have an abortion.
Well, that's actually that's a beautiful thing to say, Rosie, and you had a lot of support as well, so that really helped you with your choice of not choosing to go down that road, which does help. But tell me about the support around about the time when you were pregnant with your baby, and you had people praying for you that you didn't even know. They were in far off countries. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, look, it was pretty amazing. We had made friends with some people who had lived in other countries, and you know, that was the time when email was just becoming popular. So, you know, we sort of email them and they'd have their, you know, a church in Finland was praying for us, and then they'd email someone in the US and their church started praying for us, and we'd be getting these emails from different people who we didn't know. And my faith just started building, and I just started to think, you know what, I want to start praying that God heals my baby, because I reckon I'm a prime candidate for a healing, because, you know, I haven't really done anything wrong in my life. And, you know, I just started, I called out to God for my child, on behalf of my child. It was my right to ask to have a whole baby, and you know what, I just did, and I surrounded myself with all these scriptures, and right up to the day she was born, I was hoping that God would heal her.
And you also had your boys praying as well, and your husband Gavin. So you know, tell me about that, having that time of, you know, being pregnant, knowing what's to happen, but, you know, having that family support as well.
Look, it was an amazing time seeing my husband develop as a man who had to stand up in this awful situation and pray for his child. And, you know, a couple of times he just went off and had some time of fasting and stuff in the bush. And he had some amazing experiences with God. You know, at one time he was praying, and these 3 hawks flew over him and dropped some feathers, and his name's Gavin Anthony, which actually means great white hawk of battle. You know, just, I mean, I don't take those things as coincidences, you know. And he brought those hawk feathers home, and, you know, it was just God saying, I've got your number, I've got you guys. You know, it was a pretty amazing time.
Now, Rosie, we're going to come back, because we're just going to go for a break, but we're going to come back and talk about the birth of your baby, and so we'll just take a quick break. So we'll be back in a few minutes. I'm speaking with Rosie Glenister. Now, Rosie, as I just want to recap. Now, you were pregnant for the 4th time, and you had your 18-week scan, and they diagnosed your baby with anencephaly. Now, you chose not to abort, and you had your baby on the 1st of May 1998, and you had a baby girl, and you named her a beautiful name, Lily Rose. It's gorgeous, and I actually do have a photo here of Lily Rose in her mother's arms. And so, Rosie, tell me about that birth. Tell me about what happened, the labour and what happened afterwards.
Yeah, look, that whole day is just emblazoned on my memory, you know. I can just remember walking down the corridors of the Royal Melbourne Hospital with my sister Candy, who's a midwife, on one arm, and my husband Gavin on the other arm, and I just thought, you know, no one can touch me. I'm just in the most capable arms of you know, people who have held me all through my pregnancy, and I felt just invincible. I just felt I could, whatever happened, I could face it. And look, I remember the labour was extremely hard, and you know, I'd been praying that the baby would be born whole, but it sort of was an indication to me that because I had to just really physically push this baby out, there was no real skull to open up the, you know, the passageway, the birth canal. So, and I remember her slipping out of me, and just seeing her there on the table, and she was this beautiful, plump, pink baby, and as I saw her, she just looked just beautiful. And then, you know, I noticed that her head was sort of caved in, and there was brain tissue sticking out, and it was just like, you know, it was just like, yep, well, this is the other road now that I've got to consider. And I just looked over at Gavin and I said, can you just hold your baby and let's pray for her? And he scooped her up in his big arms, and he brought her to us, and for just one moment, it was just the 3 of us, just close up and just welcoming this baby that we had prayed for 9 months, and said, you know, you're wanted and you're loved, and we're glad you're here. And my mum was there, and Candy was there, and they just sort of formed another sort of cocoon around us, and we just prayed. And we thanked God for whatever her life was going to be. We just thanked him for her.
So, okay, so tell me about, you kept her in the hospital. Tell me about, because you had a breastfeeding issue with her as well. So tell me about that.
Look, you know, it things sort of unfold. You know, you're all happy you've had this baby, then things dawn on you, and I think I literally just shut down. I knew she was going to die, and I refused to actually feed her. I put her to my breast, and her mouth was just limp, and she had no sucking reflex. And Gavin said to me, "Well, you should feed her." And I said, "Well, why?" I said, "I'd feed her if she wanted to be fed, but she's just this limp baby." No, she didn't cry. And Candy said, "You know, you can bring her sucking reflex in her gag reflex, actually, if you just stick your finger down her throat." And I've just gone, you know, whatever, just leave me alone. I think I just shut down quite a bit. And, you know, for 24 hours, Gavin held that little baby and put his big sausage finger down her throat and just, you know, just willed that baby. And then the next day he just brought it to me. He said, "She's sucking on my finger." And I put it to my breast, and she started to drink, and my milk came in, and the doctors saw that, and they said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm feeding my baby." And they said, "She's going to die." And I said, "Not by our hand, she's not. You know, when we see her again in heaven, she'll know that we treated her just the same as our other children." So, look, I'm sure it was difficult for the doctors, because we did then want to take Lily home. And they said, "Look, usually we just leave them here basically to die." And, you know, we just laughed at them and said, "Not this baby." And so we bundled her up and put on this beautiful pink outfit on her and took her home. And we got home, it was like this, you know, homecoming. Everyone had, Gavin's family had come and my family had come, and they decorated the house and made our bed up all beautiful, and there was this big party welcoming Lily home, you know what. And for the short time that she lived, every day we had a birthday cake for her. Every day we celebrated that she had lived another day. We didn't know when she was going to die. We knew she couldn't live like that for long. So that was, it was just a horrible, wonderful time.
So Rosie, tell me about Mother's Day, because that was actually a very special day, and you did pray that you would have your daughter with you for a Mother's Day. So tell me about that.
Mother's Day was on May the 10th that year, and Lily was born on the 1st. And, you know, I just started to pray to God. I said, "Can you just keep Lily alive till Mother's Day?" And he did. You know, I had the best Mother's Day. I was loved, and Gavin did everything for me. But there was one particular incident that is just burnt on my memory, and it was Lily. Well, you know, Lily slept all the time. Basically, she'd open her eyes. She didn't cry. She'd open her eyes for a little while, but I had gone down for a little sleep with her. I just never let her go that whole day. She was hardly ever put down the whole time she was alive. And I remember waking up, and it was about 7 o'clock at night, and I think I must have just had a little light on, and I opened my eyes, and all I could see was her face, just lit by this beautiful soft orange light. And I wanted that moment to last forever, because she just filled my whole vision, just this perfect face, these little lips, and I just put my lips on hers and just held them there and just thanked God that I was a mother on that day of a live baby.
Now, Rosie, Lily died on the 14th of May, so she lived for 14 days. Tell me about that day.
Look, we knew, she was going to go. She started to, like, she would, never really do anything, but she started to have some sort of physical arrest. I'm not sure what so she would have little fits. And so that whole day we were just waiting for her to die, and Gavin made this beautiful bath for her, and we bathed her, and the boys all bathed her, and my son Daniel was in charge of the soap, and he'd be holding it, and they all had their little jobs. And when she really started to sort of fit a lot, we said to the boys, just go next door to our beautiful neighbours, Frank and Maria, and they looked after them for a little while. My mother-in-law Beth came over, and I knew Lily was dying. So we went into our room, and of course, like all good mothers, I went and made a cup of tea because I just couldn't cope, Nikki.
We're just going to have to stop there, Rosie. I'm sorry, but we'll come back to that. We'll be back in a few minutes. with Rosie Glenister. Now, Rosie, we were talking about your baby, Lily Rose, that she was born without a skull and that she only lived for 14 days, and you were telling me about her last day and how she was fitting quite a bit on her last day, and then the only way you could cope was go and make a cup of tea. So, you know, tell me about what happened after that.
Yes, I did go into the kitchen and make a nice cup of tea, and all the time knowing that, you know, my baby was in my room and in my husband's arms, and, you know, and that her time was short. And thank God that I came in at that right time, and within a few seconds of me coming into the room, you know, I just saw her expel her breath, and she didn't take another one in. And, you know, and we just came around her, and I was almost willing her to take another breath, but she didn't. And I just said my goodbyes to her. I said, "Goodbye, Lily. I wanted you. We loved you while you were here. Mummy and Daddy love you. The boys love you. You know, I'll see you again." And, you know, Beth said some words to her too, and Gavin just held her and then went and got the boys from next door, and they came around her, and you know, Daniel went straight for the cookies, and he was only 3, but, you know, we just said our goodbyes, and that was it. And you know, the next few days were pretty amazing because we didn't put her in a funeral home or anything. We just had her in a box on some ice in the lounge room, and Gavin and my brother-in-law Stuart went down to Bunnings and made a beautiful little coffin for her, and they spent, you know, so much time in the shed sawing and sanding, as Stuart's well known to do, and made this little coffin with the little gold handles, and there was a steady stream of people coming in and looking at her and just saying she's beautiful and she's perfect, and she was. My brother, as soon as he heard the news, he was in Paris, he flew down. I had a sister in Africa, you know, I rang her, she couldn't make it, she was working in an AIDS hospital over there, but, you know, pretty much from early in the morning to late at night, there was a steady stream of visitors, food was bought, you know, Gavin couldn't work for a long time, people gave us money. It was the most amazing time where I felt the hands of God were working through his church at that time to hold us. And, you know, but when we had an amazing funeral for her on our which is now our house in Gisborne, we just had laid the slab and we had the funeral for her there. But, you know, just, you know, about a month later, I started to have these thoughts that, you know, why would God do this to me? What sort of a God would hurt a family so deeply that loved their children and wanted their children, you know, and just started to have this deep sadness and thing rise up against me that I couldn't love a God like that. I couldn't serve a God like that. I didn't want to. A cruel God, you know, and I just started to get so angry at God. And I remember running out into the night one day, and every awful word that I knew, every bad, awful word, I threw at him and just said to him, "You know what? You have totally lost me." Imagine saying to God, you know. But I did. I was so deeply disappointed that I had tried to serve him, and this is what I'd got. I wrote a letter to my pastor. We were at a home church, and the pastor there was a beautiful man, John Keating, and I wrote a letter to him and I said, you know, I'm actually denouncing my faith. I will not serve a God like this. Sent it off. And his wife rang me, Carmel rang me, and she said the most amazing thing to me. You know, I was sort of hunkered down. I was ready for all the scriptures to be thrown at me and ready for, you know. She just said a few words. She said, "Rosie, you're at the crossroads of your life. You're going to have to make a decision. It's up to you whether you will continue to follow God or whether you will turn away from him. But Rosie, it's going to be your decision." I was like, "Oh, really?" And she just left it to me. She actually left me to God. She didn't try and, you know, bamboozle me with her knowledge of scripture and everything, what the right thing was. She just left me. And, you know, and that was it for about 3 months. it was shut up shop. Gavin would go off to church with the boys and I would just go, you're mad, you're silly. I would basically eat mud cake and just sit in bed and probably had a bit of depression or whatever you want to call it, just sadness. And then someone got me a book called Disappointment with God by Philip Yancey, and I said, yes, well, I will read that book and I might add a couple of chapters to it. And as I read that book, if anyone is going through something like this, get that book, Disappointment with God by Philip Yancey, and it just went through how disappointed these people were with God. And something started to happen to me. I started to realise that God wasn't a cosmic vending machine. He wasn't someone that I would put my prayers into and I would get my just reward. And that when suddenly what I wanted didn't come out, I'd kick it and smash it and say, you haven't given this to me. I started to feel that God was a lot more than I'd experienced him. And there was a night when everyone had gone to bed, we were living in a caravan, we were building our house, and all the lights were off and I was sitting there in the dark and I just felt this awesome presence descend upon me. It was the living God come to meet me, and my eyes were shut, but I knew, I could sense if I opened my eyes I would be nose tip to nose tip with God, that he had pursued me like a lover and had said, Rosie, I'm not going to let you go, will you come back to me? I could feel his love all over me, that all these words that I spewed out at him and wrote these letters, he's a big God. It's not like he hadn't heard those words before. I thought, I'm going to throw these words at you and you're going to be really shocked. He's not shocked.
Rosie, that is an amazing story and you're an amazing lady. And, would you go through that again, knowing that it was very painful?
Absolutely, Nikki.
Rosie, we are going to have to finish up there. Now, I have to mention that you do also have added 3 more girls to your family. So you've got 3 boys and 3 girls, a very regular Brady bunch happening there.
That's right.
Well, Rosie, I want to thank you again for being vulnerable, for being open and coming and sharing with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick.
Well, that's all we have on the show today. What a wonderful story to know that God loves us deeply and he will fight for us and he will come to get us no matter what situation we're in.